the Market Musings podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the Market Musings podcast here from Stopbox, where we're joining today again by Charles Archer. And we actually call this the Market Insights. It is part of the Market Musings podcast, but Market Insights with Charles Archer. So how are you doing, Charles? Good to have you on again.
Not too bad at all, Mark. How are you?
Excellent.
What have you been up to?
Yes, pretty busy actually, considering it's the summer, although at the moment this week is starting off quieter than last week, but a very busy last week. It looks like a few companies have got summer exploration programs, talking of the mining space, as normally what we do.
Indeed, well, it is.
The junior markets are full of them.
It's kind of funny, isn't it? Because all over, half of the world, if this is for drilling season, July, August, and yet we're all, everyone goes on holiday. So it feels like everybody wants to get their news out as much as possible for the next couple of weeks, and then everyone goes on holiday over the summer, and then we talk about it in September. Yeah,
come back in September. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But well, let's just talk about a few things that have been going on recently. I mean, power, metal resources, and more importantly, Guardian Metal Resources. The name change there from Golden Metal Resources, of course, doing very well recently, and I think that shed a bit of a light back onto power, not massively, but it certainly shed a bit more of a spotlight, half a spotlight maybe, onto Power Metal Resources. But I know you're a big follower of both of these companies. What do you think's driving that Guardian Metal Resources action there? Because of course they are active in the field. Do you think it's just a matter of good old-fashioned field excitement?
Well, I think it's we're gonna make the Golden Guardian mistake for at least the next 2 or 3 years,
probably.
In terms of what's driving the story there, obviously you've got a decent CEO, which always helps. You've had a fair bit of serendipity, I would say, a fair bit of luck in that tungsten, which is the key mineral at Pilot Mountain, their flagship. It is becoming politically very important, especially with China's saber rattling, and the world becoming perhaps a more dangerous place. Tungsten's applications in defense mean that this deposit is almost certainly going to get developed, and almost certainly with some kind of US government grant funding. I mean, there were leaked slides. It's kind of we know the company's applied for grant funding, and that should be coming through relatively soon. But yes, there's also exploration, right? So you're having drilling at Pilot Mountain, ready, which is already ongoing, and we're going to get assays back over the course of the next 6 months or so. And then Garfield as well, which it is also another really promising asset. So it's all coming together really nicely for Guardian Metal, and I think it's just a case of now, having done everything right, you're a little bit at the mercy of the drill bit. What's going to come up? Is it going to be exactly what Oliver Friesen, the CEO, wants to see? Is it going to be even better? Who knows? I guess we'll find out relatively soon. And then this all kind of ties back into Power Metal, because Power owns roughly 50% of the shares in Guardian Metal. Obviously, it's a child of Power Metal. It was spun off from Power Metal's assets. And their Power has this huge valuation gap where the net asset value of all of its projects and interests is double or more than double what the current market capitalization of the company is. Guardian Metal is a huge source of that, but also the joint venture that's being signed with ACAM for the Athabasca uranium licenses, that's worth well over 10 million to the company. Guardian Metal, I mean, its market cap fluctuates around 30 million now, so that's worth 15 million to the company. So those two assets alone are worth 27 million, inarguably, or more. And yet its market cap is flapping around at like 20 million-ish, and that's not even including all the rest of the stuff that Power Metal has, including Malopo, or the IPO potentials in First Development, or Power Arabia. So at some point that valuation gap will close and everyone will have a party. But until then, it feels like Guardian Metal is kind of the star of the story, and it's just going to keep rising and rising. And hopefully it'll be one of those big stories of AIM that we talk about in a few years from now.
Well, it would be nice, wouldn't it, to get another sort of big-ish win on AIM, and maybe it will take that sort of crystallising of that value for the Power Metal shareholders, for perhaps that model to be recognised. Of course, Rick Rule very much sort of supporting that, what he calls the merchant banking model. He said quite clearly when I interviewed him and Sean, he would fire Sean in the market if he doesn't actually deliver on the model. So that's good. I hope that gives enough pressure to Sean to continue
he's enjoying the pressure, isn't he? I think a little bit, but it's
well,
nice.
He's over in Florida now, isn't he? At the Rick Rules Symposium.
He's actually
so.
he actually is, isn't he? Yeah, I mean, but it lasts from the 7th to the 11th of July. A whole 4 days of symposium goodness.
Goodness.
I'm not sure we could do 4 days in the UK and actually fill up the booth. So, maybe that's a bit of a sign.
Well, Rick Rule has a trick, you see, because it used to be somewhere else. It didn't used to be in Boca Raton in Florida. I think it used to be, I want to say Vancouver, but I could be very wrong. But anyway, gotcha. He wondered why the first sort of day and a half were really busy, and then they was quieting down, and he realised that people were basically taking themselves off golfing. So he moved it to Florida because it's so damn warm at this time of year that you can't actually go outside. So it forces people to stay in the air-conditioned hotels. So and he found that suddenly everyone was staying for the whole time. So hopefully Power have a good, because I know they want to try and crack that United States market, don't they, as well? Like most do. And Oliver wants to do that as well. OTC listing, of course, with GMET there.
Well, it's the OTC. Well, I mean, GMET just upgraded their OTC listing. Sovereign Metals also upgraded theirs. Power's obviously OTC too. I think more broadly, there's this kind of this general acceptance that the capital base in London is still risk averse, and you've got all these companies chasing the same pool of capital, so you're going to have to go elsewhere and look for it elsewhere. And the Americans love a bit of risk, and they have a load of money. So these OTC listings that a lot of companies are starting to pursue or upgrade, they've realized actually there's this big pool of capital that we need to be exploiting. So Oliver is about to do a tour of America almost. Maybe not every major city, but selling the story to American investors,
US investors, good.
And then obviously that's why Sean is over at Rick Rule as well, because the last year when they went over, they didn't have an OTC listing, so it was a bit of an effort for people to buy the shares. This year, I think you might see a boost from it, but I guess all we can do is wait and see.
Indeed. But I mean, you said earlier about gold and metal almost waiting for that drill bit. But from what I talked to Oliver before and done a bit of a special feature on the exploration program, it almost seems like Desert Sheelite is already going to be profitable for the company.
Well, it already is. I mean, you already have a JORC mineral resource, and it's already the largest undeveloped tungsten deposit in the US, as you've no doubt heard countless times from various people. But
yes.
But in terms of like the drilling, they've done so much surface exploration work that they know they're reasonably confident that where they're drilling, they're going to find the goods, right? And then even if it's not spectacular, and I'm hoping that it will be, you're still going to see this deposit develop just because it just happens to be in the right place at the right time in Nevada, this amazing mining district, with America kind of desperately needing their own domestic source of tungsten. So it's already kind of a slam dunk. And I guess what it'll be really interesting to see when, as the SAYs come back, when the grant funding comes in, whether you get any kind of larger institutional investors jump onto the story. I suspect that it's quite likely they will. But you're going to want to see the grant funding first, and you're going to want to see the SAYs to see are you investing in something that's really good or something that's exceptional.
Yeah. Well, before we finish off on this subject, Power Metal Resources, then, what do you think is coming next for Power Metal that with the next, so to say, cab off the rank? I mean, it seems like the Saudi Arabian projects is sort of where Sean is focusing at the moment.
So Power Arabia is 100% the corporate focus. I mean, something that I found really kind of interesting, looking at what Sean has been up to over the past sort of year and a half or whatever, it's these sort of the strategic rebalancing. So when he inherited the portfolio as CEO, when Paul Johnson stepped down, there was just tons and tons of assets all over the world. He's done this Athabasca uranium joint venture with ACAM. He's spun off Guardian Metal Resources. There's the option agreement over Tati, the New Horizon Metals deal with Varuma, and then he disposed Victoria Goldfield's interest to Red Rock Resources in exchange for shares. All of these things are just essentially they're you're getting capital into the company, or you're getting exploration funded by another partner, or you're reducing your own capital spend. But the big thing is it's management time. It's Sean's time. Power has a small team of dedicated people, and they need a dedicated focus. It's going to be Power Arabia. Now, it's really Power Arabia is going to be, I think, for Power, it's going to be massive. It's going to be absolutely massive because, I mean, it's kind of been missed by the market. So where they went to the Future Minerals Forum back in January, and then kind of mid-January, the company announced it had signed a memorandum of understanding, so an MOU with MISA, so it's the Ministry of Investment of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And so they've now got hold of a few licenses, and they're trying to pen agreements for more. And they're going to explore this essentially just really, really kind of underdeveloped area of the Arabian Shield. And the idea is that Saudi Arabia wants to get this expertise from out of the country to explore their critical minerals because they want to divest away from oil, and Power has it. And they've already proven kind of value add to those licenses with Guardian Metal. Cost maybe a couple of $1 million back in the day, and now the company is worth say 30 million. But you've got this, but Power, not only that, they've got Rick Rule, they've got Pure Bond, they've got ACAM. They have so many investors now that are kind of like well known and they're well backed. And then beyond that, they've raised £4 million over the past 12 months. Once with Rick Rule, and then a second time with a strategic Saudi Arabian investor. And they raised that money at a premium, both times, which is kind of rare in this market. In fact, the only other company I know that's raised it at a premium was Guardian Metal as well. So they're clearly doing something right, especially in the market that we've had recently where people are throwing out sort of 40-50% discounts. They're not doing that. Now, the question is obviously how long is it going to take for the work they're doing in Saudi Arabia to translate into, value gains, both in like the net asset value, but also the market capitalization? I think it should be relatively quick. But the one thing I've noticed with Sean, the CEO over there, is that he's a very different CEO to what Paul was. He's more, he speaks to the market maybe a little bit less, but he's more methodical, more careful. He's more conservative with the cash spend. He's very, he tries to make sure that when he's putting money into the ground or into exploration, that it's going to get a return. So whereas with the Saudi Arabia work, I think that he's now decided, right, this is going to be the future of the company. This is where we're going to drive really serious value add. And so to make that happen, it's going to need to be, quick. And I think that it will be. I think we're going to get some decent exploration over the next few months.
Good. Well, let's hope so, because I know I've been a follower myself personally, and of course on Stockbox of Power Metal Resources, well, from its inception, when it moved from, was it African Battery Metals, I think, originally?
It was African Battery it was before Power Metal, and I'm sure it probably was something else before that as well.
Probably.
I mean, these companies change name, it is what it is, it's I think it's going to stay Power Metal for a long time now. I think that's it.
I imagine
it's evolved. It's like a Pokemon, right? Started out as a what are they called? What's it called? I can't even remember. Charmander, then Charmeleon, then Charizard. There you go.
Yeah, the ones that they evolve. Yeah,
yeah, and it's it's leveling up now, and it'll just be really nice when that valuation gap closes, because it's just so obvious to anyone who spends a reasonable amount of time looking into it. It just is serially undervalued by the market, and so the market needs to sort itself out and get that share price back up there. But to make that happen, you need buyers, don't you?
Well, yes, it will return, though. It will return. I know it's a whole podcast we could do on its own. But you did mention earlier sovereign metals. Now, maybe sovereign could be the next GGP. I don't know. Maybe it could be the next big winner on the London market that attracts attention into the space. I mean, I know you've covered sovereign metals for a little while, but significant progress happening, and I'm really liking the media that we're seeing from site. And you can see. I did a feature again with Sapan. We talked about the plans for the this pilot pit and the rehabilitation pits, and it was kind of like I don't want to downplay what it looked like, but it was almost like it'd been done on Microsoft Paint or something. But, it looked fine, but it wasn't like a technical drawing, but it was almost an outline. But then when you see the drone footage, it actually looks exactly the same shape-wise, and also as defined as that diagram. And it's great to see that coming along.
Yeah, well, I think, though, I'm trying to think of the words. So I spoke to Stefan recently as well on a different podcast, and it just seems really clear to me. As people who are following the Sovereign story will know, Rio Tinto just exercised their option agreements, so they now own almost 20% of the company. And this pilot plant that's being built, I mean, to my mind, it's really simple. It's Rio Tinto's due diligence to make sure that this graphite rutile deposit, which is a unique kind of deposit type, to make sure that it can be mined economically. It seems very certain that it will be. And then once this pilot plant has proven that it's that it's feasible and it's all gravy, then you'll probably see Rio Tinto make a bid for the entire issue share capital of Sovereign. The question is, well, how much is it going to be, right? Rio Tinto is the largest titanium miner in the world. That they're not going to want to let this one go. And it's a question of how much money they're going to offer for it. Now, the net present value as it stands, based on the pre-feasibility study, was just over $1.6 billion US. But they've been drilling more since then, and there's clearly, the optimization they're doing means that it could be much higher. And then on top of that, you can have premiums to when a major, Rick Rule even said it. I mean, when a major decides that it's got a strategic value, they can buy assets for a premium to net asset value. So it sounds mad, but you could be talking in kind of like the $2 billion range. But I'm wary of saying it, even if I've just said it, because it feels like AIM hasn't had a win like that in such a long time, and already, but it's the largest rutile deposit in the world. It's the second largest natural flake graphite deposit in the world. It's in Malawi, so yes, it's probably not the best jurisdiction, but at the same time, Rio Tinto is involved, and the government is extremely supportive. So yeah, I think it's I think it's going to be one of the really, really big winners over the next sort of. Well, I think it could get pulled out within the next sort of 6 to 12 months. But even if
really
it takes
that soon.
Well, it's the pilot plant. Well, there's two ways of looking at it, right? There's either they'll do the pilot plant, prove that it kind of works, and then Rio Tinto will make a bid. Or alternatively, Rio Tinto will want to wait until the end of the definitive feasibility study. Now, my argument with waiting for the DFS is that the kind of definitive feasibility study that Sovereign Metals will be able to do, even with Rio Tinto's technical support, is not going to be anything close to what Rio Tinto will be able to do with its billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of spending. So they're not going to want to wait for Sovereign to do a definitive feasibility study that they're just going to throw out and then do their own. I mean, the analogy I would make is that it's kind of like it's like if you bought a house, Mark, and you decided to kind of renovate the kitchen with whatever budget you have, and then I don't know, Elon Musk bought the house off you as a little pad in the Netherlands or wherever it is you happen to live. His idea of like renovating will be different to yours, and he'll have to throw out everything you've done anyway. Yeah. So I think it's going to be bought out, and I think it will be relatively soon. I would be surprised if Sovereign ends up developing this mine themselves. I think Rio will want it, but at the same time, Sovereign does have the operational capacity and the financial firepower in terms of access to finance. That means they could do it themselves, but I think Rio are just going to want to buy it. The last thing I'll say on it really quickly, because I feel like I've been rambling, I want you to get a word in edgewise, is because the stock is dual listed on the ASX, so down in Australia as well as in London, takeover rules apply at 20% rather than 30%. So Rio Tinto decides that. So
that's why they've gone 18.
In London, they've gone to like 19.76. If it was in London, they could go up to nearly 30. But because it's in Australia as well, they're not going to buy more shares unless they're planning a takeover offer. And boy, if they go over 20%, that thing is going to go ballistic. But they're not going to. They'll do it the right way. They'll they'll talk to them quietly and say, look, we want this. How much do you want for it? And hopefully they write a big fat check and everyone writes on and into the sunset. Whether that happens, the problem, it's easy to say that, isn't it? But
it's very easy to say that, but how big is the big fat check? I mean, what is Sovereign at the minute? 200 million, I think.
yeah. Well, no, is it even not even that maybe, but 200 million. And bear in mind, it's I think it was this like 37p a share. It was 22p a share, and back in December when I started covering them. So
Yeah.
it's already. I can see how investors who have made a substantial amount over the past sort of 6-7 months might want to take some profits. And I really, and so you might find that there might be some volatility in the share price. But longer term, it's only going one way, and that's up. But again, not advice. And if it all goes to hell, which it almost certainly won't, then don't come, blaming me. But I think it's going to do really, really well.
Yeah, good. But what, you might think some short-term volatility, you reckon?
Well, I think the problem is that everyone's been burnt before, right? So if you were buying shares at 22p back in December when I first covered it, and now it's at approaching 40p, and you've made maybe nearly 100%, depending on exactly when you were timing your buys. It's hard. A lot of people would struggle not to take some money off the table. But having said that, because you have this pilot plant, and because you know that it's going to be, it's going to produce the goods, or you're relatively confident, you're the potential for a buyout is kind of there, right next to you. And if you decide you're going to sell now, you might find that that you miss out on the buyout and like the massive rise beyond what you've already had. But B, I think that there's enough buyers that the share price won't tank at all. There's enough people who are willing to pay the premium to a share price as it is in order to benefit from hopefully from that buyout in the very near future. But yes,
Excellent.
volatility. Yes.
Volatility. Well, yeah, but also that makes it more exciting, doesn't it, as well? A bit of volatility. Wouldn't invest in AIM if the chart wasn't pretty.
No. Well, ugly charts are one of my favorite things. When everyone's sentiment is miserable and everyone hates the company, that's when I tend to like buying the shares. And when everyone's incredibly happy and no one's got anything negative to say, that's when I start to worry a bit, as a general rule.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you want to find the ones at the low end. And I know, for example, we touched briefly on Nostra Terra Oil and Gas. I know you don't know much about it, and neither do I, to be fair. But we spoke to Matt Lofgren a few times, and I know he's got different people have different opinions of Matt at Nostra Terra, but that's under $1 million market cap at the minute. New management have come in. Paul Welch has got a good track record in the sector. And he wants to turn it around, and he wants to be judged on basically on his performance. So I like those kind of stories where it's a bit of a turnaround, where something is under $1 million. It's much easier to get something from $1 million to 10 million than it is to get from 10 to 100 million. Obviously, obviously it's not without risk, of course, but I just like a good turnaround story. It reminds me of, and I'm not saying Nostra Terra in any way is going to be like Greatland Gold, but it reminds me of the days of Greatland Gold when that was completely unloved, with a management that was disenfranchised and demotivated, and it was turned around, sort of reinvigorated. And yes, of course they had success, and obviously then all the rest is history there. But I just like the fact it's so unloved, undervalued, no one's talking about it. New management, all the money's going to be put that they have into reinvesting in the current wells that they have, targeting over, trying to get to sort of circa 200 barrels a month of oil production there, and then drilling for more, basically, not looking elsewhere, using what they've got in that Pine Mills, Texas field. And I'm not a big oil and gas investor. I'll completely admit I know very little about oil and gas, but I can understand, a company that's not worth a lot. I can understand the new management that's motivated for performance, and I can understand, what X number of barrels translates to versus how much it actually costs them to recommission existing wells and also tap a new one. So yeah, we'll see. But I know you don't know much about them. But would you ever consider an oil investment?
I mean, my basic thing is, it's had a terrible run over the years, but at the end of the day, Paul, he inherited. I don't know. I know it was the most charitable way to say this, but he inherited, not a particularly pleasant inheritance, I would say. But he's saying all the right things, and he says he said, judge me by what I do. We're going to return to positive cash flow. It's going to be, it's going to be a lot better than it was in the past. I would guess that, if you're long-term investors who are down so much, at this point you kind of have you've got nothing to lose almost. And if you're a risk investor,
Yeah.
potentially it's something where you can throw some risk money in, because as you say, if he, all his dreams come true, and and Sauron is defeated, and the oil comes out of the ground, you're going to see a fairly decent rise from such a tiny market cap. But it is extremely high risk, obviously. But again, the market cap is so small that you only need some reasonably good news, and it should shift quite quickly. But I don't know. What you seem relatively positive within the confines of a risk profile.
I think, yeah, within the concept of a risk profile, because when you think about what's the cash value of a Shell, it's about what, 600 to 800, is it?
Yeah. Well, even that, I suppose. So the enterprise value is being valued at almost nothing, isn't it? Yeah.
Of course, it's not without risk. It's a bit of a risky one, but I just look at other things like Metal NRG. Went through a torrid time, and that was valued at even less than $1 million. I think it was actually close to Shell value, about 600, and that's done very well recently. I think it's up over 10 times recently, isn't it, or something?
There we go, Mark. Let's
turnaround story.
Shill for these ones. Look, it could go up over 10. It could drop 10 times, of course, but
of course it could. It could go to zero. Yeah, of course.
No, I know, but the thing is, as you say, it's I think often it's the case when you have somebody new step in to something that's a bit tired, you can see like decent results where others have failed. So hopefully, let's just cross our fingers and hope on that one. I don't think it's going to be anyone's core portfolio stock, but it is definitely something where you look at it and you go, if we put a few thousand in, we could see like a substantial return over the next 6 to 12 months. But also not. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that kind of sums up my opinion on it. But then I think that's probably true of many companies with larger market caps where there's more risk. With this one, the market cap is so small that the risk is kind of feels lower, just because, as you say, it's kind of stopgapped by that Shell value, right? So it can't really go much lower than what it already is.
But I also like, the fact that they brought Jim Williams in, who's an expert in this space, and he's put his money where his mouth is. I think he took, I want to say 11? I think about 11. It could be more. But, a significant chunk of the share capital, he now owns. And also Gervais Williams,
And Gervais always backs winners somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he said that publicly that he just feels the whole sector is so significantly undervalued. You just got to start, and I think you're starting to see this smart money moving in now. I don't think retail are in yet. Well, some are obviously, but I think you're now actually starting to see big money take positions. And Gervais Williams backing NTOG, that's another tick in the box for me. And of course, he's got money he can afford to lose, obviously. But again, maybe I should do an interview with him and find out why he decided to back. Is it a purely speculative, down the casino, roll the roulette wheel? I hope it isn't. I'm sure there's a bit more to it than that.
I hope not. The thing is that I'm trying to think of the words. Often you these kind of, when you say smart money, big money, and they come in and people go, oh, you just got lucky. It's like it, but they get lucky every time. How are they getting lucky every time? The answer is that they often they have an inkling. I don't know. I feel like often the people with more money, they know something more that's not inside information, but also potentially isn't easily publicly accessible. I guess that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, trying to find out information which is publicly accessible, but you still have to track it down.
Yeah.
But I guess
it's not going anywhere. The whole fossil fuel thing, No. You know more on this than me, but Rick Rule said in his keynote, I think it was 30 billion has been invested into renewables, and we've reduced reliance by 82 to 81%. So like 1%. It's not. Fossil fuels are not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, they're not going anywhere, are they? I mean, they like. One of the big things that I try and tell people, and kind of it falls on deaf ears, but the big problem is coal, and like lignite coal, which like burns at low temperatures, is so much worse for the planet than oil and gas. If you transitioned all coal-fired energy production to gas, that would be a far better way of spending your time, and a lot more practical as well. And the answer to the energy crisis is, nuclear power. But again, there's political problems. But the thing is with oil in general, it's not like people talk about it. So it's just energy generation, and you can like replace oil with solar panels or wind power or nuclear or whatever else. But it's not just that. It's plastic, all
Yeah.
plastics. And plastic is bad for sure, but also it's essential in so many applications. It's in tons of medicines. The entire array of human needs is using oil in some kind of form.
Mm.
And this idea that you can get rid of oil and gas and just replace it with what? Where are you making
Yeah,
plastic
precisely.
without using oil? How are you how are you getting medicine done? It's in everything. It's in literally everything. It is the key to the modern world, and yeah, oil's not going anywhere.
No.
But so what you really should be doing is looking at, okay, so coal is the big problem compared to oil and gas. How do we get rid of coal and replace it with oil or gas? Um, and then in terms of energy generation, nuclear is the answer. But it
Yeah,
seems to be that
100%.
people are just, governments are. It's like Rolls-Royce, right? They've had these small modular reactors good up and ready
Mm.
to go for like 2 or 3 years. And then they've had to go to Poland to build them because the UK government keeps dragging its feet. And they're a couple of football fields in size. It's not like it's difficult. It's not like they're massive things that need. I don't understand why we're not just building these things. The argument, back in the 2010s and in the 2000s, the argument always was, well, they'll take 10 to 20 years to build and get up and running, which is too far away to be worth considering. It's like, well, the country will still exist in 10 or 20 years. And as we recently found out when Russia invaded Ukraine, how nice would it have been to have nuclear power fuel us and not have to worry about relying on these
Yeah,
crackpot
exactly.
machines
Well, 20
halfway
years
across the
ago
world?
would have put me at, 16. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
16. And I was doing well, no, I hadn't quite started my A levels, but a year or two later. And yes, in geography classes, I still remember Mrs. Crumplin, the geography teacher, little lady, talking about the energy needs of the world and how we're going to plug the gap because we are going to go renewable, but it's just simply not going to happen very quickly. And to plug the gap, the answer
Well,
is
I'm
nuclear. And that was
yes.
20 years ago. And if we had started 20 years ago, as you say, today,
We'd be fine by now. Yeah. I mean, the one thing is that it kind of
energy
like,
crisis 2022. What energy crisis
it
2022
always
if we
kind of
had
make.
it?
It's crazy, isn't it? It makes me laugh though, Mark. It makes me laugh because look, obviously Japan is kind of coming back to nuclear, but obviously for obvious reasons, they both the power plant meltdown and obviously the bombs of the Second World War, they've kind of been historically against it. But if you look at where nuclear reactors are being built in kind of like in China, for example, it feels like the countries where there's not geographical fault lines like volcanoes and earthquakes and flooding tends to be where all the nuclear reactors get built. And then in countries like the UK, where like we have none of those, geographical issues, we kind of worry about it a lot more. It seems the world's gone mad a little bit, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
get it. I don't know.
I
I
don't get
think I
it.
think these other economies are just going steams ahead. I saw the other day. I don't want to get too off topic, but the European Union applying massive import tax duties to Chinese vehicles, and it's not
Yeah,
because of any reasons they say. It's purely because they're scared of the competition. They're scared that
that's
BMW and
protectionist,
Mercedes are
isn't
going to
it?
lose market share because the Chinese are building stuff that are actually better
What I,
and cheaper.
what I think it's like in the North Sea where Labour are now going to increase the tax from 75 to 78%. So everyone's just stopped bothering applying for licenses and everyone's just leaving the North Sea. No one's bothering to explore, no
Yeah,
one's bothering to drill. There's only 20 to 30 years of oil and gas left anyway. But this isn't specifically a Labour problem because it was the Tories that put in the windfall tax in the first place. You have companies like Harbour Energy just not making a profit at all and just kind of
mm,
giving up. And all these juniors are kind of like obviously lost all their value. But
yeah,
you're just going sitting there and you're going like, we stop taking oil and gas out of the ground in the North Sea. That's all very well and good. But China is burning like a gazillion tons of coal every day. And how much difference are we making to to the global temperature or to the
yeah.
environmental
Nothing.
crisis? Nothing. And the big problem that I mean, what irritates me more than anything else is that we still import the bloody oil and
Yeah,
gas from
yeah.
okay, we still get it from Saudi Arabia, we get it from Russia as well
We get it
in
from
a
Russia.
roundabout way.
Yeah,
We
in a
pretend that
roundabout
we
way.
don't, but we still
Yeah,
do. Like even today, I mean, people talk about it, like the gas pipelines from Russia to Europe through Ukraine. Russia is still paying Ukraine so to keep the gas pipelines open. So this idea that we that like the oil and gas is going anywhere is just ludicrous, and it's not going to go anywhere for a foreseeable future. And if you wanted to actually improve the environment, you would wean the world off coal, because coal is the problem. Oil and gas is so much cleaner than oil, and oil and gas are so much cleaner than coal. So get rid of the coal. And Germany is a classic example, because they decided to get rid of all their nuclear power plants, and then rely on Russian gas and oil, which is a problem now. So what are they doing to generate all of their energy? They're burning coal, and worse of all, they're burning lignite coal, which is the worst kind of coal you can possibly do. And so there's kind of a European Union, which is obviously effectively led by Germany, is being entirely powered by the worst possible energy source. And then they're pointing their fingers across the world at places like China or India and saying how dirty you are in terms of energy production, when actually on a per capita basis it's just as bad, if not worse. And the hypocrisy stinks. But anyway, that's not really
let's
stocks
not
related.
divulge into an environmental debate. Let's keep it to the market. So let's talk. What about Metals One then? A company who've got that big, potentially nice-looking black schist project where they're going to be going after cobalt, nickel mostly, and manganese there in Finland. Do you know much about what Metals One are doing?
I know a reasonable amount. I mean, possibly not as much as like very long-term holders. But again, I think it's one of you was talking about Nostra Terra. It maybe is like a similar kind of story. I mean, their share price is down just over 80% over the past year. They're trading at 0.85p, so a under £3 million market cap. But this black schist project that they have does look interesting. They raised cash a month or so ago. They raised £895,000, so they're well capitalized. It kind of assigns very little value to enterprise value to the assets that they have. And so if you look at this black schist project that they're looking at and the neighbors that they have as well, they've got a reasonable chance of delivering some kind of a decent return. But it's a question of how long is it going to be? What's the long-term plan? I don't know. I think it's another one of those stocks where you're kind of got to if you're going to invest there's high risk, but then potentially if you look at the essays that are coming out shortly, going to be coming out, it could be very interesting. We know there's meant to be a mineral resource upgrade or an announcement at some point soon in the next few weeks, or potentially even within the next week. And then on top of that, the big thing is going to be the preliminary economic assessment. So the PEA or the P, or so once if you have an updated mineral resource and you've got cash in the bank, which they do, and you have a hopefully a positive preliminary economic assessment, then you're looking at a stock that's down 80% over a year, and you're thinking actually this is something which could recover, potentially not recover all of its losses, but recover to a fairer valuation based on what they have. And obviously all the focus is going to be on this black schist. So it's nickel, copper, cobalt project in Finland, as it should. But they have another asset as well, which is also potentially quite interesting. So it's worth noting, the P5 JORC, the exploration target they've been going after, it was originally estimated using just portable XRF measurements, and then chemical assays. But they're trying to elevate the confidence of this, and I think as you say, it feels like the mineral resource assessment, the update it must be really soon, based on what they've been telling the market.
Yeah, I think it's very soon. I think you're saying the next few weeks it's certainly going to be out. But that's going to be a big, obviously a big point for them when you get that updated mineral resource, and then that will feed into the PEA, which they're going to be cracking on with. But yeah, I mean, good jurisdiction. I know Jonathan's very keen, the CEO there, to go after the European Union's critical raw materials act funding there, and I think there's a couple of rounds coming up. I think he said the first one is fairly soon, but they're going to probably miss that. But then the next one would be Q1 next year. They want to be having a good sort of pitch to make to that next round of funding there for that act. So it could be quite a transformational 6 months if they can get that mineral resource out soon that looks juicy, and if they can start work on the PEA and then get that pitch ready for the Critical Raw Materials Act in the sort of first quarter of next year. Then it could be quite transformational. I mean, I know he makes reference quite a lot to the neighbour. I think it's Tel Vivara. It's basically exactly the same project. Or I say project, exactly the same deposit, and that was backed by the Finnish government. And I think the Finnish government, as we know, with their oil. No, hang on, I'm getting confused. That's Norway, isn't it? But anyway,
yes.
yeah.
Anyway,
Norway's got the backing there. But still, good jurisdiction, and it looks like, I would say from the showings as a first kind of look at it, that a good comparison is their neighbour Tel Vivara, and if they can sort of replicate what they've got there, which I believe is the plan, then you're looking at a pretty compelling project, I think.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? It's neurology. That's what they call it.
Yeah, neurology is what they say, isn't it?
Yeah,
We say,
yeah.
Yeah.
And neurology is kind of hit and miss. But then again, there's exploration risk. But you already do have an inferred resource, and if you have this updated resource, you get the PEA out, and then potentially funding from Europe. I mean, and you've got again, a decent amount of cash in the bank. It's all looking, relatively compelling. Again, but as long as you don't view it as a core portfolio stock. By that I mean, often people look at these kind of like 2, 3, 4 million pound market cap companies, and they put their life savings into it. This isn't one that you want to do at the moment, but it is definitely one that you can go, okay, from a position of financial resilience and diversification, does this deserve a spot in the portfolio? Potentially there's a reasonable chance that it could be. And obviously what you're comparing it against is other kind of small companies with similar kind of market caps, like First Class Metals, for example, or I don't know, or like Nostra Terra, like you said, with maybe a little bit lower, or Mila Resources, like all these kind of like smaller ones where you can't invest in too many, because if one does really well, it won't have that much of an impact on your portfolio. So you have to pick sort of 4 or 5 that you think, right, these are the ones that are most likely to do really well. And Metals One seems to have, potentially for a lot of people, I think that they deserve a spot. And I'd say you seem to agree. It feels like you agree.
Well, I just think it's I think they could certainly deserve a spot. Like I say, I mean, you should never put all your eggs in one basket anyway. It's just a good, prudent thing to do. But no, I just kind of like this. It's a bit different, black schists. They're fairly unique deposits there in Scandinavia. I think. I saw the drill going out in the snowy flatlands of Finland there, and it's just a bit different than the barren lands of sort of Africa or the rugged terrain of Canada. They've sort of got that resource already. They've got 28 million at the moment, but they want to significantly increase that. I think even potentially doubling it, really. And then, of course, I like the fact they've got that nearest neighbour, the Tel Vivara, who we spoke about there. They've got 1 billion ton resource, and Jonathan's pretty sure that what they've got at their Black Schist project is practically the same. So I think Metals One, is definitely, it's worth a look for sure. I think it's definitely worth a look.
Well, I think, have we got any more to discuss today, Mark?
What about Cizzle? Should we finish up with a bio?
Yeah. I feel like we've talked mining.
Cizzle,
mining.
Because we haven't spoken to Cizzle on Stopbox for a while. I think it actually was almost a year, but a lot has happened when I caught up with Alan Simmers recently. They're now obviously into the go-to-market phase, basically. So it's kind of it's done.
Finally. Well, I've watched shares in Cizzle, I don't know how many years ago, and kind of forgotten about them. Yeah.
Wow.
They're one of the biotech that I've, they're one technology I looked at it and I was like, okay, this is something that could be really, really interesting. And yes, okay, over the past year or so, it's past couple of years, it's taken longer perhaps than I thought, but that's always the way with any biotech. It always takes longer than you think. And it seems to be, go to market memorandum of understandings. Finally, it's going to work. I think the CIS1B biomarker, right? The technology. This is the key thing for me. I think the technology does work. It does what it says on the tin, and so once you're screening, potentially, once people realize that it works and it's quicker and it's more cost effective and it's less invasive, it'll I'm trying to think of the words. It'll grow really, really quickly, and then possibly it'll get, I think it'll just get bought out because they don't have the operational capacity to expand it at the rate that it probably will expand. But again, it is just one of those companies where I feel like it's they should have been doing this kind of a year or so ago, but it for whatever reason it just seems to have taken a lot longer than people thought it would, including me. I include myself in that. I thought it would be much, much faster. But then I always make the mistake with that with biotechs because things take forever to get licensed and agreed.
Same with mining.
Yeah. Well, I suppose same as mining. I mean, in mining, it's a bit different, I suppose, because if you go to like Zambia, for example, or Zimbabwe, you can get licensing done relatively quickly. Whereas if you go to like Australia or Canada is the classic one. It's this wonderful mining jurisdiction once you've got the permits all in place, but to get them in place takes about 4,000 years. So I don't know. But you say you haven't spoken to Cizzle for a year.
Yeah, for a year. Yeah, he just sort of went quiet, I think, to crack on with just what they were doing. But Alan was definitely saying that they're now in a different phase. They'd really want to be getting out a bit more and banging the drum a bit more. So hopefully it's a start of perhaps a bit more of appearances, for everyone really across the market.
I mean, obviously, when you're talking about like marketing, if you're just going to have a year where you just have to grind through various regulatory stuff, and none of it's very exciting. It's just the stuff you have to get done. It's possibly not worth doing marketing for it because what is there to say? The asset is the same. And we're just waiting for, whatever regulator of the day it is to tick the box they need to tick on the form in order for us to, progress the investment case. And having done all of that, now you might find that it shoots up and then also you have a lot more to talk about. So, possibly the right move in the long run.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's see how it goes, eh? I mean, it looks like it's going to do all right, though, doesn't it, I would say?
I think so. I mean, to be fair, I have thought that for a long time. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to think of the words. It's obviously it's down sharply over the past few years or so, but it's up 7-8% over the past year. This kind of like 2.1p level, it seems to hold relatively well. But it was, bear in mind, like mid-June, it was 1.45p, so it has shot up a bit over the past 3-4 weeks. And I suspect it will keep rising because again, it's at that inflection point. It's finally ready to generate revenue and royalties and make money, which is the name of the game, obviously. But just on a kind of like a human level, this test is, if it does work out on scale as they hope it will, it could also be just revolutionary in terms of medicine. So it could be a success financially, but also medically. So it'd be lovely to see it happen. Not just for investors, but just for anyone who needs their lungs scanned, essentially. But yeah,
exactly. Okay, excellent. Well, nice to chat, Charles. Nice to chat. We covered quite a few things there, so we should do this more regularly.
I think we say this every time. I'll talk to you next year. But we're busy. I tell you what it is, right? It's like this week. You were saying your week was relatively quiet this week. This week, I had a really busy couple of weeks, and this week is looking a lot quieter. I've only got a couple of things to do, actually, like things I actually have to do. And yet by Tuesday afternoon, I should imagine that it will be filled up with stuff to do because it's the way it goes. You don't actually have quiet weeks in the small cap market. There always seems to be something around the corner. But maybe summer holidays, there'll be 6 or 7 weeks soon where like it's just not much.
It could be, yes, it could be that point. Well, at least we'll know we should have something from Power Metals this week. And how they're getting on in Boca Raton, keeping cool in the air conditioning.
Yes, they're not allowed to. We've moved away from the golf course because we want people to listen to our investment case. It's kind of a worrying indictment of Rickroll, but I do understand the sentiment. It makes sense.
I think tonight they're on a cruise. I think the cruise is tonight. If they call it a cruise or whatever it is, I don't know. Trip on a boat somewhere. I don't know.
So hang on, they're going on a cruise. What, does the power team or Rick Rule in
no,
general?
No, not about it. No, it's part of the Rick Rule Symposium. Yeah,
Oh,
there's
okay.
like a boat cruise in the. I don't know. I don't really know. I guess it's just sort of a short one with nibbles and various drinks. So and in the cooler environment of the evening, I believe.
Well, that sounds like a wonderful way to spend the day. Evening.
A nice way to finish the day, isn't it? Yeah, get out on the on the waters there on Rick Rule's boat.
Indeed.
Well, it's not his
Does he
boat.
have a boat called? I bet he has a boat. I bet it's called Rick Rules. Maybe, or the Ruling Rick or something. I don't know. Rick Prime.
Rules the waves. I don't know.
Yeah, very good. That'll be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Is he American? Is he American or Canadian? I think he's American.
He's American, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. What do they have? What would be the equivalent of Rule Britannia? Rule Americana, maybe. But,
I don't know.
Bit on the nose. Anyway, we've got.
Anyway, thank you, Charles. Until next time, take care.
Okay. Bye, Mark. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another podcast from Market Musings. Tune in next time.